You guys can hear me. My name is Aaron. Let me know if you can hear me down there in the chat. Great. Okay, so again, my name is Aaron Clapp, and I'm going to be the moderator and presenter here for today. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know in the chat there, whether it be about this or about anything EnRoute related. We are recording this webinar, so if you want to share it with somebody or if you want to go back and review it later, it should be available on our YouTube, and you'll also be sent an email with a link. So today's topic is going to be the primitives tool, along with some other things that we'll talk about here, but the new primitives tool and how that works. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure a few other people will join in here soon. All right, so hopefully all you guys can see my screen. I should be sharing it. So the new primitives tool is been reworked from the previous EnRoute 6. So this is all in EnRoute 7. We're going to talk about surfaces and things like that a bit today, along with the primitives tool, because it kind of is related. So if we go down to EnRoute 7 and go surfaces, mesh tools, we have the create mesh primitive. This allows you to create a mesh object that is allows you to use this in several different ways in order to create 3D objects you can cut. Now, one thing to remember about these primitive objects is that they do create a 3D mesh. And so we can adjust the quality up and down based on different settings here, but we'll need to convert this into a relief if we wanted to cut something like this. The good thing is you can take these primitive tools and you can also export them. So these can be exported as a STL file or a 3D DXF, and they could be opened up in other applications in case you wanted to send these or export them to somebody else to have cut or to, for whatever reason, right? Some kind of modeling or something like that. So let's kind of jump into some of the settings here. Now, one of the things that I will say that this tool definitely takes advantage of is the 64-bit that's in EnRoute 7. So in previous versions of the tool, we were in EnRoute 6, it was 32-bit. So the higher quality sometimes would come with a little more slowing down and things like that. We'll do some demonstrations here that'll show that the 64-bit really does help in rendering and processing some of these higher resolution 3D objects. So when I click on the primitives tool, something that's new is the ability to have a preview attached to your mouse. This is kind of nice because you can kind of take a look at it, or at least kind of see somewhat what some of the changes that you're making as you create the object. So we'll just create a circle here. We've got several different types of shapes that we can use in order to generate a 3D object here. I'm going to just start with the circle. We'll choose a radius, and we're going to do 3.5. And we can kind of see as we look at the shape that we've got these little lines, or the pink lines, to indicate the slices or kind of the resolution or the quality of the object that we're going to be placing. So the bigger the slices or the fewer slices there are, means that it's going to be a more faceted object. So if we go with 12 by 12 at this current size, when we go into our perspective view, we can notice that it's obviously very faceted. Now, this might be something that you're trying to achieve. So this may be the effect that you want. But let's take that same object and let's bump this up in resolution. We'll do the same 3.5-inch radius. This time, let's go to slices and let's stack them up. And let's go to our top view only so it makes it a little easier to see. And let's just go to 100 by 100. So we can kind of quickly, easily see that the detail now is small enough to where my object is very, very smooth. And the great thing is here that EnRoute doesn't have any trouble with this um, at this point. Now, this is obviously a pretty small object, but if you were dealing with larger objects, that 64-bit really kind of kicks in and makes things a lot easier to handle. So now if we go into our perspective view, we can obviously take a look at this. And yes, it is still faceted a little bit, but depending on the tool that you're going to be using, this may be sufficient quality. One of the other things you'll kind of notice here in this view while we're in perspective is that we can actually now grab, select, and move objects in the perspective view, which is kind of nice. So even 3D objects like this, I can move them in 3D space and move them around and adjust their position right inside of uh, the perspective view, which is a nice change. And as you can see, we can move these around, we can pan, and we can tilt, and that 64-bit is really kind of helping us out here. So we're able to do this very, very smoothly. So let's take a look at some other shapes here and some other things that we can do with this primitives tool. So we've got several different shapes. So we've got this cone shape here, and we also have the cylinder shape. Each one of these is going to have a different set of settings that go with it. So for example, our torus shape here is going to have our slices and stacks, and then it's also going to have a radius and a height. So let's do a radius of 5 inches and a height of 7. I'm going to click 1, and then I'm also going to uncheck the close bottom option so we can kind of see the difference between these. You know what? Let's do that again. I want higher resolution. So this makes a little more sense here. So let's go mesh tools. We'll do the same thing. Forgot to change our resolution. And let's do 40 by 40. That should do well. Okay. So on the surface, these objects look similar. But if we take a look at the top view, we're going to rotate these. I'm just going to bring up my precision input center by going to F2 on my keyboard. And I'm going to rotate these in the y-axis and rotate them by 90 degrees and then 90 degrees again. Guess I could have done 180, but I always prefer to do it by 90s just to make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, and let's take a look at the perspective. Now, the nice thing here is that now I can create, if I open the bottom on some of these shapes, I can now create a reverse of the shape. So now I could carve this into material, whereas the closed bottom just creates a nice seal on here so that if this needed to be flat, then that would help with your relief creation as well. But either way, we can create a relief on both of these objects, and this one would just get created in the negative space. So carving down into the shape. So this is kind of a nice option for if you're cutting the opposite or whatnot of the part. This can also be really helpful when doing things like uh, circular shapes that kind of constrict in diameter. So if we go down here, a really good example of this would be our cylinder shape. With our cylinder shape, we can actually define our radius from the top, and we can also define the radius at the bottom, and then of course our height. What this allows us to do is to create a kind of a cone shape, but it has a little bit of a bevel to it, but it doesn't come down to a point. It comes down to a radiused bottom. So let's just do a radius top of 5 inches and the radius at the bottom for 3. And then we'll make this height 2.4. and we're going to leave the top open and hit apply. Actually, you know what? Let's leave them both open. So, and then we'll leave the bottom and go with that. Oh, I'm going to need to rotate this one because I actually clicked the wrong one. Rotate that. Okay. Let's see. All right, so we've got two different pieces here. Again, this kind of give you an idea of some different effects that you can do. Um, yeah. Oh, that's why. Okay, so I'm still in the rotate tool there. That's why that wasn't working. There we go. Now I can move around. Okay, so now we can kind of create some unique shapes like this. I've seen customers that need to create cylinder parts. This is kind of an aggressive angle here, but if we were to close off the bottom like this, you can create a bowl shape, and you can actually cut out bowls this way, or different shapes like that that are very simple. You can also create long, tapered edges for say like the bottom of a sink or something where the cylinder has to start out larger and then narrow down to a smaller part. So this gives you the ability to do that. And now with the 64-bit, it makes these a lot easier to cut. So let's do one final thing. Let's actually create a shape, and then let's take that into our relief and kind of see how that process would be to convert a primitive object to a relief that we can actually toolpath and then cut out on our machine. So let's go to surfaces again. The first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to create a rectangle here, and I'm just going to create a relief, and then we'll use this later. So I'm going to hit surfaces, create relief. I'm going to say flat. I'm going to say add, and I'm going to say a height and a base of 0. So we're just basically creating a no thickness relief that we can apply this to later. So what is the height and width of this? I don't want to go over it. So it's 12 by 17. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go to Mesh Tools, create primitive, and let's do a cylinder. Let's increase the resolution here to 250 by 250. At the radius at the top, we want to do 5 inches, and then at the bottom, let's do 7 at the top. 7 at the top, and then we'll do 3 at the bottom. We're going to give this a height of 3. And we are going to open the top. Click to place it, close. All right. So now we can see here that we've got a nice little kind of a dish shape here with a closed bottom. And then I'm going to modify my material here, and we're going to go to here, and we'll just give it 4 inches so that we're kind of well within our range. Okay, so then what we want to do is we're going to take this object, and I need to make this a little bit bigger, which is fine. So what I want to do is I want to place my bowl shape above the material, and I want to put it above or on top of my relief. Then I'm going to select both objects, and I'm going to say, and actually I'm going to actually rotate this around because I want to cut it the other way first. So let's rotate this around. And then I'm going to grab it and move it to the top of the plate. Oh, you know what? Let's just do it this way. Move. And how thick is our piece? We made that 3 inches, so we're gonna go right at 0. Okay, so we're on top of our relief, and we're centered in the relief. It doesn't matter exactly where. And then we're gonna apply mesh to relief. We're just gonna say faceted object and add and hit apply. Hit close, and now we have created our relief that's tool pathable at this point. So now I can take this object, this yellow object, and I can toolpath it with a routing offset or island fill. Typically, is what you do, or in this case, you might even use a spiral fill so that it cuts around instead of just back and forth. And then that is going to be using the primitive tool with a relief. So again, a simple tool that has a lot of uh, applications in the 3D world if you're using that, or even in the part building department kind of thing. So making it easier for you to apply shapes, obviously using the 64-bit to make sure that we can create parts that are usable, really smooth. If we look at this one, using that 250 by 250, once we create our tool path on this, it's going to be really high quality. And you can see here that EnRoute's not really even struggling with this at all. And I'm on a laptop. So we've got a lot of potential here. The 64-bit's really helping us in the perspective view. Also with the tool pathing is going to be much better. And then just placing of the objects. Before, creating an object of this size with this kind of resolution might have given you some trouble. So this is going to be much, much better in that regards. So that's going to be creating those shapes. And again, you can kind of come in here and check out some of the, oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Mesh tools. We've got a shape here for, I guess this is like a torus shape or something, like a donut shape. And so you've got your inner radius, your outer radius, and then a sweep angle. You can do a complete 360, or for example, if we do a 180, do half. That's kind of a half donut shape there, or half arc shape. We've got planes and disk size. These are kind of more for just creating flat surfaces. And then, of course, we can do obviously boxes. We've got a lot of parameters for those. Each one kind of has their own unique setting for them. But if you need to just create a basic object or some basic objects, you can do them here in EnRoute without having to go to a third-party software and do that here. Now, once it gets more complicated, you might have to do that, but at least you've got the ability to create these objects. And now with the preview that you have that you can use as you scroll in, you can see your slices and what that's going to look like. And then also placing it makes it a little bit easier. It's just not going to get placed in a random spot somewhere on the sheet. So now you can actively place that, and you could place multiples if that were necessary. You could actually start to use the snap tools along with a grid and snap them to a grid. If you wanted to combine those tools with this, that would make it easier to snap these into locations. So overall, this ability to have the preview and the 64-bit helping out this tool, it makes this a little bit better for you to use in case you do use it a lot. So just as we wrap up here, are there any questions about this or about anything else in EnRoute that you might be interested in? And while we're waiting for any kind of questions, I just do remember that we are recording this and we'll be sending it out later today. So if you missed some of it, then that's okay. You can go back and rewatch it, and it'll be available on our YouTube channel. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Ryan, if you want to. Go ahead and type that up then. One of the things is that I'll kind of just briefly go over then too while we're looking at this is these objects we can, as I mentioned before, we can export these objects and let me pull it up here. So now we can export these as a DXF file, or we can go with our typical type of STL, which is going to be supported by most of your other 3D applications, or an OBJ. So OBJ would probably be your second best bet in terms of 3D exporting options if you wanted to do that. Okay, so it says in the previous versions of EnRoute, I could perform mathematical formulas in the move menu. Okay, so let's see here. Let's grab our move commands. I know in certain areas they're still allowed to, and some are not. So the move commands doesn't allow you to, but let's see if the scale does. It doesn't look like it lets you do that. Something that it's something that we can definitely look into for sure. Um, if that was something that was working before and should be working now, we'll definitely take a look at that. So yeah, we can take a look at that for sure. Um, I can do a little bit of research that for you on that, and then just report back on with our development to find out if that was working before. I think we should have that back in there again. But I know some of our menus should. Let's see here. Looks like it's not working there either. Interesting. I wonder if this was something that happened recently. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that for you and see if that's something that we could take a look at for sure. Yeah, and I'll follow up with Dave on that as well. Any other questions about this or about anything else in EnRoute? Okay, Ryan. Yeah, definitely. I'll grab your email here real quick and I can follow up with you on that one. And let's just go ahead and start a new. I'll just paste it in there. There we go. All right. Well, sounds good. If there's no other questions, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, guys, for joining. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, you can always, while watching the video later, you can always comment in the YouTube comments, and they will be available there. Or you can reach out to our tech support. It's esupport@thinksai.com, and then any of those questions that you have, they can address there. Or if you uh, or having any trouble with any of the features in EnRoute 7. Thanks again for joining us, and you guys have a great day.